Hey everybody, gonna give you a run through of the mods I've done to my 2017 Z900. I got this bike used, but it only had about 16 miles on it, and so I've had it for about a month now, and just want to give you kind of an overview of all the mods I've done, so you can get an idea of what you can do to yours. And we'll get started here. I have a list, so I'm going to run through the list from cheapest to most expensive. So let's start off with the bar ends. Got these Rizoma bar ends on this side. It's just to clean up the bike, make it a little narrower. That's what I'm really going for, the most narrow I can get. And on this side I have a Driven Racing lever protector. I've repainted it with black here because I did go down with this bike, so it got scratched up really bad, so I just sanded it down and repainted it. It looks much better in my opinion now than it did brand new. But let's move on to the next thing. I got the phone mount here, the X grip phone mount. It works perfect. I've had more than one crash in my lifetime, and I have it on all my bikes, my Daytona, and my brother's MT-07 has it as well, and he's never had problems. Works perfectly, and you don't need a special case to go on your phone or anything like the other phone mounts. Next up is the Fender Eliminator from Vagabond Motorsports. They're from Amazon. I love this Fender Eliminator Kit that they make. It's super simple. I've had one for my Grom as well, same company, and they install in about 10-15 minutes, and it's a very simple, well-built thing, so I definitely recommend that. It comes a little more canted up this way, and so I kind of just bent it back down just because it looks a little better. I don't know why it had the angle so high up from factory. Next thing is foot pegs. So the the Z900 comes with rubber foot pegs, which are super cheap looking. They come like that. The same kind of foot peg comes on a Honda Grom. So I don't like the feel of it, especially if you're in the canyons. You don't feel what the bike's doing at all. I know on the Grom it's there to help with the vibration, but there's no vibration really on this bike, so I don't know why it comes with those grips. So I switched them out for a Puig, the racing grip, and the mount itself. You have to buy these two separately, and this is perfect. This is what it should come with from factory. One thing it does do is lower your foot, because the rubber foot peg sits about up here, so this drops your foot down. It's a little more comfortable riding position, but it also you will have to adjust your foot brake and your shift lever. Right now my foot brake is maxed out as low as it can go. I wish I can go a little lower, because right now it's kind of uncomfortable. Pressing the rear foot brake, my foot's canted up too high. I feel the foot brake should be right about here to make it feel perfect, but I can live with it. The shift lever has much more adjustability, and that can go very, very low. As you can see, this is the position I have it in, and it's very comfortable for shifting up and down. Next up is, let's see here, tank grips. I went with these tech specs, and they're amazing. I used to have stomp grip, but stomp grips are really aggressive for just street use. If you're riding with jeans and you accelerate hard and you grip in the tank with your knees, you're gonna feel some pain, because the little nubs on the stomp grips are really pronounced. but these are very much more comfortable for street use. The tech specs, they work perfectly, and it's a kit, so I don't have to cut my own. Like the Stomp Grip doesn't have a kit specific for the Z900, so I went with this kit, and it fits great, and it protects your zipper is protected here on the tank, so you don't scratch up your tank. One thing that's kind of annoying is that my knee sits right in this crease, but when in the canyon, I do kind of sit back in the seat, so my knee hits up here, which is great. But if I'm riding around town, I'm usually at the front of the seat, and my knee is sitting right in this area. It's not a big deal. I still get traction on the top and bottom, but I just wish the knee was in a different position. Next up is heated grips. This was kind of one of those things that I didn't think I needed, but once you do have them, you can't go without. I installed those on my Daytona a long time ago, and I use this commute to work. And although I am in California, it does get kind of chilly, maybe 45s as the lowest, 40, 45 lowest in the mornings. So this is really, really great to have on those morning commutes. You can just crank it up to full 100% heat, and it's actually almost painful how hot they get. One thing you really need to keep in mind is the position you have these where the wire leads come out of. You really need to think ahead of where you want those to be in the resting position and in the open position if it's the throttle side. Especially on this bike. I'll talk about my handlebars a little later, but especially on this bike where space is very limited, you can see these are almost touching. So you want this in a position where when the throttle is closed, you can still close the brake without interference. You don't want this any lower than it is now, or else you won't be able to, this will interfere with the brake lever. And on the clutch side, it's not that, on the clutch side, it's not a big of an issue, but you also need to keep in mind where this will hit the bike when the bars are closed. So this is full lock, and it's almost touching, but not. So you need to make sure you think ahead before you put the super glue inside the grips and slide them on. Also, you need to leave slack for full throttle. So this is kind of the minimum amount of slack you need. Another tricky thing with this bike is that if you leave too much slack, the wire will get hung up on your lever here, so it'll get stuck right there, and it won't rebound all the way closed. So you really need to make sure that the slack is taken care of. Once you have those dealt with, the heated grips are probably the best thing you can do for your bike if you do commute. Next thing is sliders and Radiator Guard. So I picked these up from Amazon again. They look similar to the stock Kawasaki frame sliders, which I really like, but they're kind of pricey. These were about $100 for the pair, and they look great, so I picked them up, and I've already tested this side once. Although this bracket here, this bracket that holds the slider here, it does bend and actually deformed all the way down because there was pressure on the top of the slider. It did protect the frame, which is what it's made for, and the engine, so that's great. And they mount straight through the frame here. This frame mount also holds the engine, so you need to be careful once you pull the bolt out that when the engine drops, you don't strip the new bolt going in. You need to kind of support the bottom of the engine so you don't strip this new bolt. And then the Radiator Guard is this piece here. It looks okay. It's not my favorite, but the price was right, and I went ahead and just picked it up. I don't like the Kawasaki kind of chrome aluminum one that they sell. let's see what's next. Steel braided brake lines. This is a must-have. I never ride a bike with rubber lines. It's just a lot of fade, and the initial bite isn't as good. I picked up these Spiegler steel braided brake lines in black line and black end. And it's a kit that they make for the Z900. It's very well priced. It's about 180 bucks. And throw those on. You do need to know how to bleed your brakes. If you want to install these, but it's a relatively simple install. This Kawasaki really knows how to build a bike. I mean, everything comes apart so easily. The front headlight assembly comes off all in one piece. Very simple to do. And then this is what the ends look like. It also comes with the rear line as well. Here it is. It's a little long, so I looped it up and it's out of the way, and it works great. This bolt here was leaking when I went out for a test drive, even at the torque spec that is recommended. So I just cinched it up a little tighter, made that seal work, and it's been good ever since. The rear brake on this bike is really good for a stock rear brake. On this MT-07, it's an absolute sponge. I mean, it's a horrible rear brake. This bike is very firm on the brake, and you've got a lot of feeling from it. So I'm really impressed with the rear brake on this bike. Next up is the ASV levers. Now this is a personal preference, but I always put levers on my motorcycles. I feel that they're more ergonomically designed, so when you're on the handle, or when you're on the throttle like this, and you go to grab, your fingers are placed right in the bottom of this curve. So it's an easy grab, and I like a long lever for the brake side. That way, if you really need to put 4 fingers on, you can do that and get some leverage, stop as quick as possible. And on the clutch side, I like to have a shorty lever. This makes for really quick and easy clutch pulls, and the clutch on this pull on this bike is super light. That a shorty lever is even better suited for this. On the longer stock lever, these 2 fingers got in the way of the lever action. They would hit the lever because it was so long. One thing you need to keep in mind on this, for some reason, you really need to adjust the lever position out with this knob in order to have enough throw to disengage the clutch sensor, or else you can't start the bike in first gear even with the kickstand up. So I was having trouble. I didn't know why the bike wouldn't start in first gear, but I realized that when this is pulled all the way in, the bike thinks that the clutch lever still isn't engaged. So you really need to keep that in mind. Other than that, it's worked out really well. I love the levers. On the MT-07, the clutch on this is super strong for some reason, so a shorty lever probably wouldn't be a good idea if you're in a lot of stop and go traffic. I would recommend maybe a longer lever. What's next here? I have a Corbin rear seat. Now this isn't something everyone would want to buy, but I ride 2-up a lot actually with my girlfriend, and the stock seat is probably the worst I've ever felt or experienced on any bike I've ever had. And you would think a sport bike would have a worse back seat, but my Daytona back seat is it's a couch compared to the stock rear seat on this bike. And so I went ahead and bought the Corbin rear seat for her. It's much thicker, much more padding, and it honestly looks much better. I got everything in black. I didn't want the Corbin stitching. I'm not a big fan of the marketing, so it's been really good. It's a super tight fit, So you really need to push down on it to get it to engage. But the build quality is fantastic. I mean, you can see here, it's all built in-house, and it fits perfectly. I hear some stories of seats that guys have gotten that are loose or need kind of adjusting to make work, but this fit perfectly, so I'm really happy with that. Another thing on the list is the Kawasaki Ergo comfort seat. The stock seat on this bike is super low, and it's super hard, almost as bad as the rear seat. And just riding it home from the dealer, my butt was in pain. So this was the first thing I actually bought for this bike, was the taller rear seat on Amazon. It's a reasonably priced. It is expensive, but I understand why it's expensive. I don't care for the Kawasaki stitching, but it is what it is. It's a very comfortable rear seat. Now long drives are not an issue. And yeah, highly recommend, as if you own a bike, you need this seat. Some people say that the stock seat is not bad, and it's they use the stock seat for canyon riding because you feel like you're more inside the motorcycle. But I don't agree with that at all. I feel like this riding position is just fine for canyon riding, and I go in the canyons all the time. I ride this bike aggressively, and this seat is fantastic. What else? Handlebar is next. Handlebar's next. So I didn't like, although this bike is sporty, the stock handlebar was really good. I just felt it was just a little too upright. Like, I'm used to sport bikes, and I like that forward leaning position, especially on the highway when you've got the wind blowing against you and it's kind of pulling you off the bike. Having a little more forward canted position helps the pain on the spine. I have a lot of back pain, so if you're leaning forward a little, your spine isn't being compressed as much, and you're better able to maintain higher speeds without fatigue, more like without fatiguing yourself. So I went with the I forgot the name of the handlebar, but it's the ultra low. I think it's the Protaper. I'm sorry, yeah, Protaper ultra low handlebar. And although I made it work on this bike, it's very difficult to have such a low bar on this type of bike. A low would probably be an easier install than the ultra low, just because of the fact that the bar here wants to contact this shroud as well as this shroud. So you need to make sure that you have the the handlebar at the correct angle. For me, the correct angle for any bar is that the logo on the bar needs to be right in your eyesight when you're sitting on the bike. That would be the correct position for the bar. And so that's what I did on this, but I wish I had made it a little more canted up. That way I'd have more room for things to not hit the two shrouds. Like right now as it is, the bottom of this this box here, I forgot the name of it, it almost makes contact. It does just make contact with this shroud here, and I don't like that, but it is what it is. It's in position right now. I've already drilled the hole, and you cannot really move this up or down without re-drilling the hole, and then it's just going to be moving around after that because the holes are so close together. You've kind of just enlarged the hole. So the ultra low, it works. You don't have a lot of room for your hands at full lock, which is inconvenient. But then again, you don't spend a lot of time in parking lots making these kinds of maneuvers, so I'm going to live with it. It's very comfortable now for me, especially that forward lean angle is what I was looking for, and I'm happy with them. But you cannot physically go lower than these bars on this bike unless you're planning on cutting up your plastics. So just keep that in mind. Next thing is I did pick up a set of Val Stems that I also bought with a handlebar, because the stock valve stem, and I hate this, but the stock valve stem is just a right angle valve stem, or sorry, it comes out like this. So I bought a right angle stem, which I honestly don't know why factories don't do this to begin with. This is how it should be. It should come out just like that, so you can air it up easier and read the tire pressure much easier. So I have that. I'm just waiting on tires to come in so I can put those on. Another note about tires: this bike comes with the worst stock tires I've ever experienced, which is one of the reasons I did low side this bike a week after purchasing it. The stock tires are horrible in the wet. Absolutely the worst. There is no traction whatsoever. I mean, this thing spun up in fourth gear at 80 miles an hour on an on-ramp to the freeway with these tires because it was a little wet, which is crazy. It shows you the amount of torque that this thing puts out. But I would definitely recommend a new set of tires on this Z900 if you own one. Any kind of wet riding situation, you really need to be careful, or else you get yourself in some trouble. What's next? I also have these Showa spools. It's very difficult finding spools that fit for this bike because where you thread the spool on is right here, and there's a bit of space, as you can see here. It's kind of inset, so I had to use a bunch of washers to get this spool out, or else the lift for the rear end will scratch up the swing arms. So I made those work. They work great now though. Next thing up is the IXIL headers. So I looked at a bunch of header options or decat options for this bike, and these were the cheapest I could find, and I didn't see the benefit in purchasing headers for twice the price that are basically going to do the same thing. And so I got these for around $450, and they're great. They're stainless steel, not titanium. The diameter of the tube, the header tubes look they look just like stock, but to me the Akrapovic headers look a little thicker, but I'm not sure about that. I'm just looking. This is just based on pictures. Right now I've got the stock can hooked up to the headers because I'm still waiting on my SC project to come in. It's about a month out when I ordered it, and it's probably a week and a half out now. And the stock muffler works fine on this header. You can see the O2 sensor there. It's been moved. Stock O2 sensor is about in that area. It's covered by the shroud, but it's moved over here for some reason. That's kind of annoying, but it is what it is. The decat sounds really good. The stock muffler sounds really good right now, but I'm sure it'll sound much better with the SC project once the SC project's installed. The bike really needs a tune, although, because it backfires when I come to a stop and it's running really rich. I can smell the fuel dumping out, and that's going to happen as soon as I get my SC project. I'll have the ECU shipped out to a tuning company, and then they'll ship it back, and it should be perfect. What's next? Oh, the next thing is the SC Project exhaust. I don't have that, but it's on the way. One thing I didn't mention was the mirrors. Although the stock mirrors are really good, they're just really big, and they just don't look very good. I don't like bar ends mirrors because the aim of this bike, we're in California, so it's lane splitting is legal, and you know, I lane split to get to work every day. So the narrower the bike can be, the better. The more situations I can get past. The Daytona is perfect for lane splitting because it's about as narrow as your shoulders, but with fitting the new Protaper ultra low bars, I've narrowed the stock bars by about an inch, maybe half an inch, and with replacing the stock bar ends with a Rizoma bar end, it's narrowed it even more. Although the the lever protector does take some room, I think it's worth it in case someone pulls out and you happen to hit their mirror. The brake lever doesn't compress and flip you over the front of the bike. So this is very important to have. So that's the reason I don't go with bar end mirrors. I like the top mount mirror, and this is just like an $80 set that I picked up from Amazon for my Grom that I've crashed multiple times with on the Grom. As you can see, it's got road rash everywhere, but they still work great. They're very adjustable, and on the Grom they're really vibrant. They're really buzzy. I couldn't see anything out of them at a stoplight, but on this bike they're perfectly still, and so they work great. Although they're a little smaller, and they're magnified, very magnified by like maybe a time and a half. So to get the best use out of them, you really need to get your head close to the mirror. But all in all, they work great. And I think that's about it. This has been a fantastic bike. The power is more than enough, especially with the full exhaust system, and the probably going to pick up an intake for it. I'll pick up another 10 horsepower over stock. And like I said, it's spun up in fourth gear in the wet. Maybe not so much due to the power, but maybe the shitty tires. So yeah. Future mods would be rear sets. Those are not critical, but they're nice to have. What else did I want for this bike? Brake pads are very important. Maybe some EBC pads, front and rear, sintered. Those are probably the hardest biting brake pads you would want on the street. The Brembo Master Cylinder. I know my brother installed one on his MT-07. I think it's called the RSC 19. This is a fantastic upgrade. The braking performance is almost tripled. Even with one finger, you can stop this bike on a dime. On my Z900, there's a huge dead space. Although the brakes on this bike are the best on any stock bike I've seen, it's just that from here to here, there's nothing. Nothing happens. Once you get past this point, then you start braking. On the Brembo, there is no dead space. It starts braking the instant you put your finger on the brake lever. So you gotta be very careful, or else you'll lock up the wheels. This bike, I chose not to get the ABS version, so that's even more of an issue. But that is probably a mod down the future. Another thing I didn't mention was the GB Racing engine sliders. I think these are a must-have, even with a frame slider, as you can see on this side. Even with a frame slider, nothing is going to protect the case here. The first point of contact is here and up here, and this is going to be scratched up no matter what. So I've got one coming for this side as well. The other side just was in stock and not this side, so I don't see a real reason to get a slider for this side.
Hey, cool ass.
But so yeah, I've just got these two coming, and maybe some Ohlins in the rear, and maybe Ohlins cartridge kit in the front. The stock suspension is very well set up. It's just the front is really bouncy for some reason, and the rear likes to just drop down and sit. It doesn't rebound, which is kind of what you want, but they should be. It shouldn't be either or. It should be both the same. But that's about $2,000. I'm not wanting to spend right now. Another thing I didn't get for this bike is a windscreen. My brother did get one for his MT-07, and I thought it was a good idea. But riding his, it seems like the wind is now directed further up, and it hits right about where your head is. So the wind noise is really loud. Riding my bike is very quiet because I assume the wind is just hitting my chest and not my head. So the noise is much less on my bike. So I feel like the money I'd spent on a windscreen that would make the bike look uglier would be even worse than stock, because I just have way more wind noise. So I know that's about it. It's been a long video, but I hope you got some ideas, and see you on the next one. Thanks.